Now here's Brian with today's Real Estate Show.
Good morning, Charleston, and welcome to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. I'm, of course, your host, Brian Beatty. Thanks for joining me this morning. I've been on this program for coming up on 14 years. I've been selling real estate for 20 here locally. We've done about 1,500 transactions. We've helped about $1 billion worth of real estate bought and sold in that period of time. And this show is all about arming you with the information that you need to be successful when it comes time for you to buy a home, sell a home, invest in real estate. Maybe just like to stay up to date with what's happening in the housing market so that you can make some plans for the not too distant future. That's what the show is all about. So welcome. Today, we need to talk about something pretty big. Earlier this week, the Trump administration hinted at the possibility of declaring a national housing emergency this fall. I'm not sure if anybody caught this or not, but you heard that right. A national emergency for housing. This hasn't been done since the Great Recession. And if it happens, there's the possibility of some pretty dramatic reshaping of the market, at least temporarily. So that's what we're going to break down. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about really where I see some opportunity in this market right now. I think a lot of folks listen to this show to just gain insight into the market. But I want to turn some of you on to how people are winning in this kind of tumultuous market. It's very challenging for people to wrap their head around what's happening in the housing market right now. So I want to talk about where you can find some wins and how you can approach the process in such a way that you're not necessarily guaranteed results, because there's no guarantee in life except for death and taxes, but how you can position yourself as best possible to get the best deal when you buy and the most money in your pocket when you sell your house. But for now, let's talk about this national housing emergency that Trump hinted at. And so what does this actually mean? Well, first of all, the National Emergencies Act of 1976 allows the president to bypass Congress and take executive action. And you've got the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, recently confirming that basically everything's on the table. And so here's kind of what that might look like. First of all, the government could do something like waive tariffs on building materials, which would help reduce construction costs, of course. They could also potentially streamline zoning and permitting codes that might make it easier to build new homes. You know, a lot of the cost associated with building a home is regulatory in nature, red tape related. So there might be some opportunity there. They're also looking at the possibility of reducing closing costs, which is a cost you pay when you sell your property or when you buy your property. Both sides have closing costs. You know, on the buy side, it's, lender-related fees, title searching, title insurance, attorney's fees, because in South Carolina, we're an attorney-based state rather than using a title company in other states. You've got prepayments for taxes and insurance and so on and so forth that go into escrow accounts. And then there's also been talk over the course of the past several months about maybe opening up some federal land for development. And that's kind of its own can of worms, because in most instances, this land that the government owns is in rural areas. They're on the outskirts of town, basically. So the question is there enough demand among buyers to live in areas that the land is owned by the government? So why is this even being, considered? It's because across the country and right here in Charleston, we're facing a housing affordability crisis. I mean, if I could wrap it all into one word, it's affordability. It's high prices coupled with high interest rates. And in the grand scheme of things, and I'm going to stand by this comment, interest rates in and of themselves are not high. There's so much media out there talking about historically high interest rates. They're nowhere near historically high. Go buy a house in the 80s and pay a 17, 18% interest rate on your mortgage, and then come talk to me. We do not have historically high interest rates right now. What we have right now is incredibly high payments in relation to how much money are people making, right? That's really the measure of the health of the market. And I've talked a lot in this show about our specific areas affordability index. which looks at the cost of owning a home in relation to how much money we're making, median numbers. And right now, brass tacks, the number is about 72%. As a median household income in our metro area, we are only making about 72-ish% of what's necessary to qualify for the median priced home in our market, given prevailing interest rates and a 20% down payment. All that's just to say that homeownership for a lot of folks is just out of reach. So, let's start a little bit with what this can mean for buyers. If tariffs are lifted on construction materials, builders could build homes less expensively, right? Which might slow down some price growth, right? Because that's good news for buyers that are just frustrated with affordability. If zoning and permitting gets streamlined, new housing could come on the market faster, which has been the challenge, right? Where even with the increase in inventory, right? The number of homes that are available for sale at any given point in time, even though that's going up, we're still not theoretically putting enough new construction inventory on the market to keep pace with quote unquote demand. That is changing fairly rapidly. So if new construction homes come to the market faster, it just means more options. It also means more competitiveness for those that need to sell their home that are going to compete with new construction homes, which is already a severe challenge. Just ask anybody that's trying to sell their home in Somerville as an example. If you look at the possibility of reducing closing costs, then that certainly helps in terms of bringing less cash to the table. And what's interesting right now is that over half of the transactions that we're seeing in our market include the seller paying some or all of the buyer's closing costs. Right now, in a little over 50% of every sale, you've got an average of $8,000 that the seller is paying on behalf of the buyer toward their closing costs. So I don't know if a lot of you knew that or not, but that's something that has changed, right? People are trying to hold on to the price of the home that they sell. And one way around that is by offering the buyer some or all of the buyer's closing costs. Then you look at things like interest rate relief, which has been the major topic. There's a lot of chatter about the federal funds rate coming down by hopefully 25, maybe even 50 basis points this month. We need to, of course, remember that what our government decides to do with the federal funds rate does not exactly parallel the interest rate on a 30-year fixed mortgage, right? There's going to be more than likely a reduction in interest rates. I'd love to see it happen. So would everybody else. It's going to shake some people loose. It's going to be the difference for some people between being able to buy a home and just having to wait. And that's where a lot of people are right now. They're on the sidelines. They're waiting for something to shake loose. And I want to talk a little bit later on in this program about where there's actually some opportunity. I think, anytime, and I've kind of lived by this in my entire life, whether it's marketing or looking for business opportunity, it's where there's chaos, there's opportunity. And a lot of people just don't understand what's happening in the market right now. And as a result of that, they bury their head in their sand, they kick the can down the road, and they wait for more definitive information so that they don't feel like they're going to make a bad decision, the wrong decision, something that's going to cost them money. And honestly, we're starting to see the shift in the market really impact folks, because we've been talking about the shift in this market for quite a while. I mean, about a year at this point. And we're already starting to see people that, maybe bought a new construction home that now need to sell it for unforeseen reasons, really struggling to compete with all the other homes that are out there that are new. And we're going to get into why that's such a challenge right now in just a little bit. But what does this mean? Obviously, for buyers, the benefit would be that if the builders are able to build something less expensively and more quickly, that's going to add to inventory. That's going to give buyers more options. And a lot of these builders own their own mortgage company, which is really the competitive advantage they have over a traditional seller that owns their home that just wants to sell it and move into something else, right? They have the ability to manipulate the interest rate. They have the ability to say, hey, if you buy this new construction home at our price and you use our lender and our closing attorney and you basically plug into our entire process, then we're going to give you like a 4% interest rate. And for a lot of folks, that's awesome news, right? it really makes it challenging for sellers. I mean, if new construction ramps up, inventory increases, that's going to put downward pressure on pricing, especially if you're competing against, brand new homes. On the flip side, if buyers sense relief on the horizon, you could see activity spike as more people kind of jump off the sidelines and get into the market. And that means well-priced homes in desirable areas could still move quickly. And that's kind of the interesting part of this market right now, is that even though we're transitioning into more of a buyer's market, really more of like a normal market, people are behaving like it's a buyer's market. But really, if you look at the numbers, technically we're trending toward a normal market in the Charleston area. We've been a seller's market for years and years and years. But as that market shifts, opportunity arises. Sellers that have a home in good condition, that are marketed well with the right agent, that are priced effectively, are still selling quickly. Nearly half of the homes in our market are selling in a week or less. The average for when you look at the quarterly numbers, it's like 44% of properties are selling for full price in a week or less. It's the other half of the inventory that's skewing the numbers, as people have these pie in the sky dreams about what they think they can sell their home for, or they're just waiting too long to see if that price is actually going to work for them. They then come to the realization it won't. They adjust their price and ultimately they sell, but they've been on the market so long, buyers use that as an opportunity to beat them up even further, which is why pricing your home effectively, hiring the right agent that's going to market it appropriately is so important. We're going to talk about that too. But strategy right now is critical. And I think that if a national housing emergency is declared this fall, it could obviously bring some short-term relief, some long-term opportunities, but it's not a silver bullet. And I think we can all agree that less government intervention is a good thing, right? We'd like to see the free market work things out. I think we could certainly use some relief on interest rates. But if you're wondering how these potential changes might impact you, the value of your home, your ability to buy, let's talk. Give me a call, 843-800-0065, 843-800-0065. You can also check us out online. I'm, of course, your host, Brian Beatty, and thanks again for sticking with me this morning. We were just talking about Trump's comments earlier in the week about the possibility of declaring a national housing emergency. And the reality is, nationally, builder stocks they're reacting cautiously. Some optimism there, but a lot of just kind of wait and see. Locally here in Charleston, though, this could impact us a little differently. If tariffs, as an example, come down and new construction gets a boost, we could see more affordable homes on some of the outskirt areas of town, things like Johns Island, Somerville, Goose Creek, where land is still available. But you look at downtown Charleston, Mount Pleasant, the islands, those areas are always going to have tighter supply. There's no real room to build massive neighborhoods like there used to be anymore. Johns Island, Somerville, there's still so much land available. There's room for growth there. Somerville, obviously, much more so than Johns Island, but you know where I'm going with this. The areas that are going to face tighter supply are going to have limited impact to value, because new construction isn't going to be so prevalent that people that are selling their homes individually are going to have to compete with those new construction homes. I think this is one of the reasons why it is so important to zoom in locally on our real estate market rather than just relying on national headlines. Charleston has its own rhythm. Your strategy needs to fit that. And different areas of Charleston have significantly different dynamics and trends within those markets, which is why what's happening in the Charleston metro area, or the generalized increase in the median sales price, really doesn't have too much to do with you and your specific home in your area and your neighborhood in your price range. So if you really want to get an understanding of the market right now, talk to somebody that's an expert in the market, somebody that follows it, somebody that can speak intelligently about not just what's going on and why, but what we think is going to happen next based on consumer interaction, right? Based on the actions or inactions that people are taking and how they feel about it. That's, I think, one of the reasons why, quite honestly, we do such a great job with our clients is because we have a true ear to the ground. I mean, really, our real estate team has been in the top 1% of agents for the past 15 years. We do a lot of transactions. We have a unique view on the real estate market, not just because of our daily interactions with consumers and clients, but because of this show as well, right? I have been trained. I've been training myself every day, every week, every month, every year for the past 20 years to provide you guys with insights so that you can make some informed decisions. And so what I want to talk about is really the feeling that I think people have in this market right now. How are consumers feeling and behaving? And why does that even matter, right? Real estate, as you know, residential real estate is an emotional roller coaster for a lot of people. It doesn't matter what kind of market we're in, up, down, buyer market, seller market, flat. There's always going to be stress. It's always an emotional ride for people. Some folks have the ability to detach emotionally and just look at it as a business transaction. And frankly, those are the people that do quite well in real estate. These are the typical folks that maybe they're well connected. Maybe they know several people that sell real estate, but they don't necessarily want to do business with friends. They want to do business with a professional. Or maybe they know too many people that sell real estate and they don't want to choose one and hurt everybody else's feelings, so they choose somebody they don't know. I kind of get that a lot. I understand it. And I receive those phone calls, and when I do, I appreciate that, of course. But I think that people right now obviously are concerned and confused about the state of the real estate market. They're not entirely sure which direction it's headed. And the challenge with that is that people don't want to catch a falling sword, right? Let's not forget that not that long ago, we had a serious issue in our real estate market when it crashed in 2008, and we had to deal with the aftermath of that for several years, about 5 years. So people still have scar tissue from that. They don't want to find themselves in that position again. I can't tell you the number of people that just lost it all when that happened, especially people that were speculatively investing in real estate, or maybe folks that were building spec homes, right, to just sell for profit, or they'd go and they'd buy a new construction home and then sell it for 20, 30, 50 grand more because that was the trend in the market. Well, obviously the music stopped. A lot of people were over leveraged, and then everything fell apart. And what was interesting is, I started selling real estate in 2006, basically right after graduating, a little bit after graduating college. And so here I am, this kind of young buck, right, that doesn't have a ton of real estate experience. I came from a real estate family, so real estate's really all I've ever known and all I've ever done. I've been pulling weeds in parking lots since I was 13 years old for shopping centers that my family owned. But and real estate's all I've really ever wanted to do. But in 2008, here I am in my early to mid 20s, helping people out of basically the worst financial situation they've been in their entire lives. And so I'm working with them and their lender to negotiate short sales or representing buyers or investors to purchase these properties. And we did hundreds of these transactions in a short period of time and became an expert in that side of the business. Well, then obviously the market got much better, and short sales and bank-owned properties and foreclosures and so on and so forth really just kind of went by the wayside. They were so few and far between, it didn't make sense from a business perspective to focus on it any longer. I think what we're starting to see is more and more people that have their back against the wall because they bought a home in the last year or two and it hasn't appreciated enough for them to be able to sell it and walk away. They're going to lose some of the down payment because, again, the property hasn't appreciated enough. And when you go and you sell a property between commission and closing costs and negotiability and just the state of the market, especially think about the folks that have purchased a home in the past year or so in Somerville, where there is so much new construction inventory available for sale that it's really hard to compete against it, especially if that builder is going to offer the buyer a 4% interest rate or their closing costs covered. There's a lot of incentives that builders can offer that sellers just can't compete with right now. I mean, for a seller to offer a buyer a 4% interest rate would cost an unreasonable amount of money. So there's struggles there. And so I think that when markets are in positions like this, where they're a little stagnant, there's opportunity. So what do I mean by that? There's opportunity for sellers and for buyers. And these are the markets where people either do really well or they lose their you-know-what. And I think a lot of it has to do with the person that's in your corner, helping you, coaching you, guiding you, consulting you on the process and positioning so that you get a good deal and you feel good about what you've done. Obviously, there's the benefit of moving into a new space, right? And just the joy of being in a new home. But the process is where you win or lose a bunch of money. And so on the seller side, we're going to talk about this next. I think it's incredibly important that you as a seller be picky in who you choose, that you ask tough questions when you interview a real estate agent if you're deciding to hire one. And if you're not, Godspeed, because for sale by owners are having a really tough time right now. I think it has a lot to do with not just the marketing, right? Because price is a function of marketing, right? At the end of the day, I could broadcast an overpriced listing to everybody in the world and get really good and granular with regard to who I'm promoting that information to. But at the end of the day, if the buyer's like, oh, that's nice, but it's overpriced, there's not much else that I as a real estate agent can do, right? So it's all things combined right now. It's the overall strategy that you employ. It's doing things like investing more time and energy into things like your curb appeal or decluttering your home and taking the guesswork out of it. Hire somebody that has a process that's dialed in that allows you to sell your home for top dollar. I think the other thing that, in addition to just pricing it correctly, because there's a whole segment we could go through talking about the number of sellers out there right now that are overpricing their home and then adjusting later on. But because they've spent so much time on the market, by the time they adjust it to where it should have been at the start, it might have to be even lower than that. And these people are getting beaten up by buyers. There's the silver lining for people in this market right now. If you position your home well, you hire the right person, you market it well, and you get a good deal on the home that you're selling, there are plenty of people out there that are frustrated, that have been on the market for longer than they thought they would, that are now more open-minded to taking a reduced sale because they just want it sold. The other thing to take into consideration, and this is kind of the real kicker, is that maybe that agent's a little tired and fed up too. Maybe that agent just says, you know what, just take the deal. Let's move on. You don't ever want somebody in your corner to kind of give up. And I'm not saying that agents are of the mindset that they're like, you know what, just take the deal and get out of here. I want my commission. I'm sure there are some agents out there that think that way. But over time, it seems like people tend to lose a little bit of interest in not necessarily doing the right thing, but just in the process overall. They're just tired. They lose patience. Agents don't want to be the person that say, well, hey, I told you so. You should have priced your home here. Now we have to go even further below that in order to sell it because the markets continue to shift in the wrong direction against you. And it makes it really tough on the seller. And so we're going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about what are some of those things that sellers can do right now that seem to be making all the difference. What are the differences between those that sell for top dollar in a week versus those that have to sit on the market for 100 plus days, that had to do a series of price reductions, that had to pay some of the buyer's closing costs because that's all that was left. They basically ruined their opportunity out of the gate because they were priced too high and they were viewed as being unrealistic by buyers. Or maybe that home that was overpriced simply promoted the other properties that were better priced and better deals. And now those are recorded sales. Those are now the benchmarks for value in that area. So we're going to talk more about that. Obviously, we've got a lot to talk about. I'm not sure we're going to get through it all this week. We'll maybe save some content for the following week, but stick around for the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show right here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. And remember, if you want to reach out to me, my number, 843-800-0065, 843-800-0065. Maybe you'd like an idea of what your home is worth. You're considering selling it. You want to interview me to be your personal real estate agent. Maybe you're considering buying a home. You want to know where some opportunity is. We've got a great list of folks that are off market that would entertain selling their home. In addition to everything that's on the market right now and our ability to find what you're looking for. And then just lastly, if you can't catch all of this radio show, just remember that we turn this audio into a podcast, which you can find on iTunes and Spotify and Google Play and iHeartRadio. And we video this so that you can watch it on YouTube or TikTok or Facebook or Instagram. Just search the Brian Beatty team and you'll find us. I always like to take a moment and just say that I appreciate those of you that listen to the show or that watch the show on YouTube or listen to our podcast and reach out for whatever reason to engage us and our ability to help you buy a home or sell a home or invest in real estate or manage your real estate for you through our property management company. But we also get probably just as many, if not more, calls from folks that just have general knowledge questions, or maybe they need a referral for a good contractor, or, hey, Brian, let me pick your brain about this situation. Or maybe, hey, I just got my tax appraisal back and it's higher than I think it should be and I want to contest it. How do I do that? Happy to help in any way we can. You're welcome to call or text me. My number, 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. Or check us out online, listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. So we've already kind of covered a lot of ground today with regard to things like, Trump hinting at maybe a national housing emergency. We've talked a lot about, I think, how people are feeling right now. I think a lot of sellers are kind of feeling like they're having to give up a little bit in order to get a deal done. But I want to talk about how we can avoid that, because this revolves, in my opinion, around strategy. And strategy when selling a home is incredibly important. So just for a moment, bear with me here, because I want to tell you kind of how, generally speaking, selling a home works. Through just like the typical, average real estate agent, the average process, what happens, what do they do, what can you expect? And obviously in this market, you want above average, right? So we're going to just talk about the baseline. The baseline is the agent's gotten really good at doing his or her listing presentation, right? They've gotten really good at marketing themselves and what they do. I mean, just look at any real estate agent's Facebook page this day. Apparently you have to be a celebrity in your own mind to sell real estate these days. Don't get me started on the persona of the average real estate agent, because frankly, it just annoys me. I don't know of any other industry where people celebrate themselves more than real estate agents. That's why I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I mean, I haven't posted anything on Facebook in way too long. But it's because, honestly, sometimes I get tired of it. I get tired of the shameless self-promotion among real estate agents. But anyways, not to get on that soapbox, all right? We could go for far too long on that topic. I think if you're a seller right now, how do you win, right? Well, if you're thinking about just selling your home, again, the average real estate agent is going to come in, they're going to give you a nice presentation, right? But at the end of the day, a lot of the agents are doing the exact same thing. There's really not a lot of differentiating factors among real estate agents except for like personality. And a lot of people charm their way to success. So what they'll do is they say like, hey, here's all the exposure we're going to create for you. And here's the analysis of the market. And, here's the list of homes that have sold in your neighborhood at an average price per square foot of X. And well, you're a little nicer than average, so I'm going to actually say you should be priced up here. The whole process is, for those that are really experienced, that are, I would consider myself at this point an expert in the real estate market. I'm not going to shy away from that. I've done too many transactions to think otherwise. And it's true because we help a lot of people. And we've had other agents that have called us that have said, hey, I can't sell this listing. Do you want to take it over? I mean, I think when you get to a point where you're selling the listings that other agents can't, and they're the ones calling you, that's a pretty good sign. But I don't want to, I'm not here to boast about that. What I'm here to talk about is when you sell your house and the average real estate agent says, hey, we're going to put it in the MLS and it's going to go on all of these websites, right? So wherever somebody's looking, your home is going to be visible. If we're not getting the activity and the showings and the offers we should, then we're going to need to adjust the price. So yeah, sure, we can try this pie in the sky number that you have an idea your home might sell for. But the problem is too many agents are, they either don't know how to analyze the market right now, they don't actually know what that home would sell for in today's market, or they lack the backbone to be like, hey, if we go on the market at that price, this is likely what's going to happen. And this is the ultimate impact to your bottom line. At the end of the day, you're the owner of the house. You're in control of the process. But the person you hire and the advice they give you, the consultation they bring to the table could be the difference between you being the person that sells in a week for top dollar or the person that sells in 100 days for 92% of the value of your property because you kind of messed up the beginning portion of it. So, think about it this way. When you first go on the market for sale as a homeowner, you're essentially marketing to two different groups of people. Group number one are the people that are ready, willing, and able. They want to buy a house. They're just waiting for the right one to hit the market. And when it does, they're going to buy it, so long as they feel it's a reasonable deal and you guys can work out the deal. The other group of people are the people that just enter the market every day, right? Something has changed in their life, and now they are ready to buy a house. Usually, within the first, call it 3 to 4 weeks, you've exhausted that first group of people. They've seen the house online. They've heard about it. They've made the decision to come and see it in person or not. And they've made the decision to make an offer on it or not. This is where a lot of people get tripped up. They overprice the property. Buyers that are ready, willing, and able are watching the market like a hawk. They're pretty well educated on what a good deal is versus what a not good deal is, right? And so they see you hit the market. They see it's overpriced. And what do? They view it online, they save it, and then they wait. They wait for you to adjust your price. A lot of sellers think, well, why not just make an offer, right? Unfortunately, buyer psychology is just a little weird. You would think that if somebody sees a house they like and it's overpriced, that the buyer would make an offer anyways, but that's not always the case. In fact, that's rarely the case. Sometimes what happens is your overpriced listing is helping your competition sell faster because it's making them look better. So you at least want to be in the top 3, if not number 1. And the way you do that is by improving things like your curb appeal and just the overall appeal and aesthetic of your home. If you have some deferred maintenance, now in this market, it makes sense to do that before you list rather than just push it off on the buyer. Because if it's getting pushed off on the buyer, they're going to make you pay for it. Or it could be things like, pricing your home effectively. If you overprice your property, you're more than likely going to sit on the market, which is why we're seeing all these homes do price reductions. We've seen more price reductions this year than we have in like a decade. We're also seeing, like 15% of homes that go under contract fall through, which is the highest it's been since like Redfin, as an example, started recording that data. And that's for a variety of reasons, inspection issues, financing issues, cold feet. Maybe the buyer feels like they're just not getting as good a deal as they maybe thought they were getting, or something else hits the market that's a better deal and they jump ship. It's a bit of a frustrating time to sell a home as a homeowner because buyers are a little wishy-washy and they expect a little bit of a deal somewhere along the way. And in most instances, they're getting it. So sellers are feeling like they're having to give up more control than they have in the past in order to sell a property. And to an extent, that's true. Let's be realistic. Sellers don't hold all the cards anymore. This is not a powerful seller's market like it was a few years ago, where people were fighting over each other and bumping elbows in a crowded, open house to be the one that makes the offer first or makes the best offer or waives their home inspection or waives their appraisal. They just say, I just want it and I'll deal with the repercussions later. That's not the market we're in anymore. So I think if you're a seller, hiring the right agent, incredibly important because they're going to be the ones that tell you the truth about pricing. They're the ones that have the ability to understand your specific market and the trends within it and position you properly. Positioning is really important. But then the question is, all right, well, if we're going to price our home well, how do we take advantage of that? How do we promote the home in the best way possible? And a lot of that, of course, revolves around what that agent can do from a marketing perspective. Does that agent have the ability to truly promote your home to potentially interested buyers? Or is it just this kind of set it and forget it approach that so many agents take? Let's not forget that, in order for an agent to really properly market a home, in my opinion, they have to have a marketing budget. And the average income of a real estate agent in South Carolina is not good. It's not high at all. So a lot of folks just don't have the marketing budget. But I think the difference maker right now, in addition to, your appeal, not just in person, but online, the way in which it's priced, are you competitive, or are you just one of those homes that is overpriced? And there's a few more of them that are overpriced. It makes the ones that are priced well look better and sell faster. And the problem with that is that once those sell, that's a recorded sale that then becomes the benchmark for value in that area, right? Because value is determined based on what people pay, not how much people ask. And then at the end of the day, you have to work with somebody that understands how to promote that home to interested buyers. That's something we have done for almost a decade now, believe it or not. We've worked with a company out of California that sifts through demographic, geographic, behavioral data and identifies people that they believe are looking for a home like yours, and we market to them directly. It's not rocket science, but the learning curve is pretty steep and it's costly. But that's something we've done for folks for almost a decade, and it is magical, the difference in interest that we get on our listings once we started doing that, because that's ultimately what sellers want, or what they should be asking. They should be asking, how are you going to find buyers for my house? How are you specifically going to promote my home to the right people at the right time with the right message? And quite honestly, most agents don't have an effective solution for that because they are relying on all of the websites like Zillow and Realtor.com and Redfin that already have the traffic. I mean, there's no way that I as an individual can compete with Zillow when it comes to online traffic, right? I'm a small fish in a very big pond there. But what I can do is I can use all this data that's available, because everything we do online is tracked, right? There's little profiles on every single one of us out there that are then sold to companies to market products to us that fit our online behaviors and our demographics and geographics. It's fact. We can do the same thing with real estate. We can hyper-target people that we think are actual buyers for your home. I won't go into how we do that because that's one of our competitive advantages on our team. But if that's something you want to learn more about, maybe you're thinking of selling a home, again, I think that, and we're seeing it right now, you still have the ability to sell your home and get a good price on your house if you do all the right things, and then go out into the market and actually get a good deal on a house to buy. There are more options now, which is what kept people on the fence for a long time. And because there are more options, if that seller is working with somebody that maybe isn't as strong of an agent, there's an opportunity for you to get a good deal on a house you buy. So when we come back, we've got a few more things to talk about. Not too much time left, but if you're thinking about selling a house, buying a house, investing in real estate, maybe you have a property you'd like for us to manage for you through our property management company, give us a call. We'd love the opportunity to earn your business. My number is 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. Or check us out online at listingsincharleston.com. Appreciate you guys listening to the show. We've covered a lot of ground. I think that at the end of the day, the market is confusing, right? A lot of people have mixed emotions on it, and no one really wants to get burned. So a lot of people are sitting on the fence, and they're just kind of waiting to see where things are going to go. Are we truly heading into a buyer's market, or is this just a little blip on the radar until interest rates come down, and then we're just kind of back to business as usual? It's tough to say. I'm not necessarily of the opinion that a 1/4 or a 0.5% drop in the interest rate is going to fix all of our problems. Because at the end of the day, real estate is expensive in relation to how much money people are making. Now, again, we've got a lot of folks that move in here from other parts of the country. They're selling expensive real estate and they're moving here with cash in their pocket. And that's what makes it challenging for folks that are just, locals to an extent, to compete with things like that. That's also one of the reasons why we've had such an increase in value over the course of the past several years. I mean, we've had property values double in, 6 years? So for buyers, I want to talk to you for just a moment, because on this show we talk a lot about the home selling process, which is where I think a lot of education needs to come into play. As a buyer, though, in this market, there are a lot of people out there right now that have room to go down on their price, right? You have to think about it this way. Think about all the equity that's been gained in our market over the course of the past several years, right? Of course, those sellers are going to have to sell their home and then go and buy something else, more than likely. And so what they discount for you, they obviously want to try and make back up when they go and they buy something else. But I think that there are some incredible opportunities for buyers out there. There are sellers that are a lot more negotiable than you think they are. And they're approaching desperation. They're already at the level of frustration where they're kind of getting fed up. You're starting to see sellers firing agents. You're seeing homeowners that are taking their home off the market. 1 in 4 homes are not selling right now. 1 in 4 homes that get listed get taken off the market in some way, shape, or form. And on top of that, the ones that do under contract, 15% of them are falling through. So it's not a very easy market to sell in, but I swear, if you hire the right agent that really truly helps guide you through this process, that gives you the right advice at the right time, and is willing to have accountability measures in place so that if they're all talk, you have the ability to get out of that agreement and go and work with somebody else. I think that, again, though, buyers have a unique opportunity to basically take advantage of some situations for their benefit like you haven't seen in years. I mean, almost a decade, really. So if you're thinking of selling and buying, link up with the right agent. If you think I might be that agent for you, I'd love the opportunity to talk with you about it off air. My number, 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065. Listingsincharleston.com is our website. That's listingsincharleston.com. Remember to check us out online, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Facebook, all that great stuff. Just search the Brian Beatty team. But you guys enjoy your weekend, and thanks for listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning at 9 and Sunday morning at 10. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-800-0065. That's 843-800-0065.